You are cursed, broken. I will never bind myself to something so weak. Raphael Shannon spoke those words before the entire Crimson Veil pack, rejecting his fated mate in the sacred binding circle. He called Bethany Hudson damaged goods because she bore the silence, born without the wolf's howl that marked true strength. That was 4 months ago. Now Bethany is dying. The incomplete mate bond is devouring her from the inside, burning through her veins like liquid fire. And the healers give her 2 weeks, maybe less. She's coughing blood. She can barely stand. And every night she feels Raphael with his chosen woman through the fractured bond, a torture worse than death itself. But Bethany isn't ready to die. So on the night of the dark moon, she does the unthinkable. She crosses Shadowfen River into forbidden territory and offers her unmarked neck to Blake Jordan, the ruthless alpha of the Nightshade Pack, Raphael's blood enemy, the man her former mate hates most in this world. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe. Trust me, this story only gets more intense. Drop yes in the comments if you think she should make him pay. Now, let's get into it. Chapter 1. The rejection that started a war. The blood came up warm and metallic, splattering across Bethany's pale fingers as she doubled over the wooden basin. Her small cottage was silent, except for her ragged breathing and the distant sounds of Crimson Veil Pack gathering for the evening meal. She wouldn't go, couldn't bear to watch them together again. The mate bond burned like acid in her chest, a constant reminder of what should have been and never would be. 4 months ago, everything shattered. The Moonfire binding had been the most important night of her life. Every unmated wolf in the realm gathered under the full moon, waiting for the sacred bonds to reveal themselves. Bethany had felt the pull the moment Alpha Raphael entered the ceremonial circle, a golden thread connecting her soul to his, undeniable and absolute. Their eyes met across the sacred flame. For one perfect moment, she thought she saw recognition, hope. Then his expression turned to stone. The pack fell silent as Raphael crossed the circle toward her. Bethany's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, her mate, her alpha. The moon goddess had chosen them for each other. Raphael stopped 3 feet away, his handsome face carved from ice. When he spoke, his voice carried to every wolf present. The bond may claim you are mine, but I reject this union. His green eyes swept over her with something worse than hatred, disgust. You will never wear my mark. You are cursed, broken, unworthy of an alpha's claim. The words hit like physical blows. Bethany heard gasps from the crowd, but they sounded distant, muffled. You bear the silence, Raphael continued, his voice cold and final. You have no howl, no true wolf voice. You are too weak, too quiet. You would shame my bloodline and weaken everything I've built. I will not bind myself to damaged goods. He turned away from her, and the thread between them stretched taut, burning. Then he extended his hand to Carrie Strong. A beautiful Carrie with her midnight hair and fierce amber eyes. Carrie whose howl could shake mountains. Carrie who had always looked at Bethany with barely concealed contempt. Carrie's triumphant smile as she took Raphael's hand was the last thing Bethany saw clearly. The incomplete mate bond struck like lightning to her chest. She collapsed in the sacred circle, her vision going white with agony. Inside, her wolf howled silently, as always, a scream of anguish that no one else could hear. And the pack looked away, some with pity, most with agreement. She was broken. Everyone knew it, even her fated mate. Now, 4 months later, Bethany wiped blood from her lips with shaking hands and moved to her window. Through the glass, she could see them, Raphael and Carrie walking the packlands together, his arm around her waist, her head thrown back in laughter. They looked perfect together. The bond twisted in Bethany's chest, a constant torture. Every time he touched Carrie, Bethany felt the ghost of it. Every time they were intimate, the bond burned hotter, reminding her of what she would never have. The door creaked open. Anita Joyce, her younger sister, entered carrying a clay cup of bitter medicine. Her gray eyes were full of unshed tears. "You need to drink this," Anita said softly. "The healer said..." I know what the healer said. Bethany took the cup. 2 weeks at most. The rejected bond will consume me. Her body was eating itself alive, trying to complete a connection that would never be fulfilled. Anita sat beside her, taking her hand. You deserved better than him, better than all of them. Through the window, Raphael pulled Carrie close and kissed her. Bethany felt it like a knife between her ribs. But beneath the pain, something else stirred, something cold and sharp and furious. She was dying anyway. The question was whether she would die as Raphael's rejected, a pitied failure, or whether she would make him regret ever speaking her name. Her sister squeezed her hand tighter. What are you thinking? Bethany's eyes never left the couple outside. I'm thinking there are worse things than dying. Like dying quietly. Bethany. There's another alpha. One close enough. Powerful enough. She turned to face Anita, and her sister's eyes widened at the determination there. One who hates Raphael enough to help me. No. Anita stood quickly. You can't mean... Blake Jordan. The name hung between them like a curse. Alpha of the Nightshade Pack. Raphael's sworn enemy. The most dangerous wolf in the Eastern Territories. He'll kill you, Anita whispered desperately. Or worse. I'm already dying. Bethany stood, despite the weakness in her legs. At least this way, I choose how my story ends. She crossed to her small desk and pulled out a worn map. Her finger traced the border between Crimson Vale and Nightshade Territories. In less than a day's journey. Close enough to be dangerous, close enough to be possible. If another alpha marks her, the rejected bond will break. The thought had haunted her for weeks now. A new mate bond would sever the incomplete one, stopping the deterioration. She would live, but there was only one alpha close enough, powerful enough, and angry enough at Raphael to even consider such a proposition. Please don't do this, Anita begged. There has to be another way. Bethany looked at her sister. Young, hopeful, still believing the world could be kind. There isn't. That night, Bethany stood at her window and watched the pack house, where Raphael and Carrie slept peacefully, untroubled by her dying. Voices drifted up from below, Raphael and his beta, standing in the moonlight. The broken one won't last much longer, the beta said. Healer says days now. Good. Raphael's voice was cold, indifferent. The constant reminder of that mistake will finally be gone. Carrie deserves better than to have my rejected mate haunting the packlands. Something inside Bethany crystallized in that moment. Not just desperation, not just survival instinct, pure, cold fury. She would cross Shadowfen River. She would offer herself to Raphael's enemy, and she would make them all, Raphael, Carrie, every wolf who'd looked at her with pity, regret ever thinking she was weak. At least this way, as she chose how her story ended, and if she was going to burn, she'd make sure Raphael burned too. Chapter 2. He moved on, she moved up. 4 months felt like 4 lifetimes. Bethany barely recognized herself in the polished bronze mirror. Hollow cheeks, bruised eyes, skin pale as moonlight. She'd lost so much weight that her dresses hung loose, and every morning brought fresh blood on her pillow. The rejected mate bond was devouring her from the inside out, but the physical pain was nothing compared to watching them together. At pack gatherings, Raphael and Carrie were inseparable, and he touched her constantly, a hand at the small of her back, fingers threading through her hair, lips brushing her temple. Carrie wore the alpha's favor around her neck, a silver wolf pendant that caught the firelight and announced to everyone exactly who she belonged to. Raphael never looked at Bethany. Not once. He walked past her as though she were empty air, his gaze sliding over and through her like she'd already ceased to exist. Maybe in his mind, she had. The pack followed his lead, as they were kind enough, bringing food she couldn't eat, offering medicines that barely dulled the pain. But they kept their distance, speaking to her in hushed, pitying tones. She'd become a ghost haunting the edges of pack life, a cautionary tale whispered to young wolves about the cruelty of fate. Only Carrie seemed to truly see her, and that was its own torture. At the autumn feast, Bethany made the mistake of attending. Anita had begged her to stay home, but some stubborn part of her refused to hide completely. She sat at the far end of the long table, barely touching her food, while Raphael and Carrie presided over the celebration like king and queen. Bethany watched him feed Carrie roasted meat by hand, his thumb brushing her lips as she bit into it. Carrie's laugh rang out, musical and bright. Then she turned, caught Bethany's eye, and smiled. A victorious, knowing smile that said everything words didn't need to. I won. You lost. He chose me. Yet the mate bond flared hot and vicious in Bethany's chest. She fled before anyone could see her, doubled over in agony. That night was worse. Bethany lay in her cottage, trying desperately to sleep when she felt it. Them. The mate bond carried echoes of Raphael's pleasure, phantom sensations of touches that would never be hers. She heard Carrie's cries through the pack house walls, felt the rush of Raphael's satisfaction, like fire in her veins. She collapsed on the floor, screaming silently, clawing at the place over her heart where his mark should have been. Her wolf whimpered inside, a dying echo of what it once was. For hours, she convulsed with pain, certain this was finally the end. But dawn came, and she was still breathing. 3 days later, she stood alone in the forest, far from the packlands, and she screamed. Actually screamed, her voiceless rage tearing from her throat in a raw, broken sound that sent birds scattering from the trees. She screamed until her throat bled, until she collapsed against a tree trunk, gasping and shaking. Her wolf was barely there anymore, just a faint whisper in the back of her mind where there should have been strength and wildness. Why? The word escaped her, broken and desperate. Because you would have weakened everything I built. Bethany spun. Raphael stood 10 paces away, his expression unreadable. She hadn't heard him approach. Once she would have sensed her mate anywhere. Now the dying bond was too fractured.
That's all?
Her voice was raw from screaming.
That's why you're letting me die?
Something flickered in his eyes. Regret? No. Discomfort, maybe. He didn't like being reminded of what his rejection had done. An alpha must be strong, he said coldly. You are not strong. Binding myself to you would have been a weakness I couldn't afford. So you chose her instead. I chose survival. I chose power. His jaw tightened. The prophecy. He stopped abruptly, as if he'd said too much. What prophecy? Bethany pushed away from the tree, her heart racing despite her weakness. Raphael's face closed off completely. It doesn't matter now. You're dying anyway. He turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the forest with her rage and a single, terrible word echoing in her mind. Prophecy. That evening, the healer came to her cottage with eyes full of sorrow. Days, she said quietly, taking Bethany's pulse. Maybe a week if the bond continues deteriorating this slowly. I'm sorry. There's nothing more I can do. After she left, Bethany sat in the darkness, listening to distant sounds of the pack settling in for the night. Raphael's laughter carried on the wind. Carrie's answering voice, warm and content. Bethany pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart struggle against the poison of the incomplete bond. She pulled out the map again, traced the route to Shadowfen River with trembling fingers. The name came to her in whispers, stories she'd heard her whole life. Blake Jordan, alpha of the Nightshade Pack. He'd killed 5 challengers for his position in a single night. He took what he wanted without apology. His pack was fierce, loyal, and feared throughout the realm. But there were other whispers, too. He'd claimed a battle-scarred she-wolf as his second, a female warrior who'd lost her eye in combat. When other alphas mocked his choice, he'd challenged them all, daring any to question his judgment. None had. He honored strength, the stories said. Real strength. Not the pretty, performative kind. Bethany's fingers traced the border on the map. The distance was less than a day's travel. A memory surfaced. 6 months ago, before everything shattered. The border meeting between Crimson Vale and Nightshade packs to negotiate hunting territories. Bethany had attended with her father, barely noticed among the gathered wolves. Except someone had noticed her. Blake Jordan stood across the neutral ground, massive and dark-haired, with eyes like storm clouds. While the alphas argued, his gaze had found her in the crowd. Held. Something electric passed between them. A pull she didn't understand. She'd looked away first, heart racing, confused by the intensity of his stare. Now she understood. He'd felt something even then. Perhaps not a mate bond. She'd already been tied to Raphael. But something. Recognition. Interest. Possibility. The door opened. Anita entered, carrying fresh bandages. She saw the map and froze. You're really going to do this? Not a question. I am. He could kill you, Beth. He's dangerous. Ruthless. So am I. Bethany looked up at her sister. Or I will be, if I survive. Anita's eyes filled with tears. And if you don't? Bethany folded the map carefully. Then at least I'll die trying to live, not waiting to fade away while Raphael forgets I ever existed. She stood, despite the weakness, despite the pain. I leave at dawn. That night, Bethany packed what little she could carry. And a change of clothes, the map, a small blade for protection, and at the bottom of her bag, wrapped in cloth, the one thing she'd kept from the binding ceremony, a white ribbon meant to tie a mated pair's wrists together during the marking. Raphael had never touched it, but maybe if she survived this, someone else would. She stood at her window one last time, watching the pack house where Raphael slept peacefully beside the woman he'd chosen. You called me weak, she whispered to the darkness. Let's see if you still think so when I'm standing beside your greatest enemy. Dawn came cold and gray. Bethany shouldered her pack and walked toward the forest, toward Shadowfen River, toward the dangerous alpha who might save her life or end it. She didn't look back. Chapter 3. When the prey becomes the predator. The pack's small library smelled of old leather and dust. Bethany sat surrounded by territorial maps and ancient treaties, learning everything she could about the wolf who ruled the lands beyond Shadowfen River. Blake Jordan. The name appeared again and again in the records, always marked with warnings. Dangerous, unpredictable, not to be trusted. But between the official warnings, other stories emerged. 2 years ago, as the Council of Alphas had met to settle a territorial dispute, Raphael stood before them all and called Blake a savage, unfit to lead. He'd argued that Nightshade Pact should be dissolved, its lands divided among civilized packs. Blake had won that challenge, decisively. He'd stood before the council and systematically dismantled every argument Raphael made, proving himself not just stronger, but smarter than anyone gave him credit for. Raphael had never forgiven the humiliation, and Bethany traced her finger along the border between the territories. The hatred between these two alphas ran deeper than simple rivalry. This was personal, bitter, perfect. You shouldn't be out of bed. She turned. Anita stood in the doorway, arms crossed, worry etched into every line of her face. I needed to understand what I'm walking into. You're walking into a death trap. Anita moved closer, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Blake Jordan isn't some noble hero who'll save you out of kindness. He's ruthless, Beth. The stories about him. I know the stories. Bethany rolled up the maps. I'm counting on them. What does that mean? Bethany met her sister's eyes. It means I'm not going to him as a victim begging for mercy. I'm going as an opportunity he can't refuse. She pulled out another document, this one older, the parchment yellowed with age. Ancient text written in the old language. Oh, what is that? A prophecy. Bethany's hands trembled slightly as she held it. I found it buried in the archives. It's about the silence. Anita's breath caught. The curse you were born with? Not a curse. Bethany's voice was quiet but fierce. A mark. Listen to this. She who bears the silence carries the voice of the ancients, dormant until claimed by one strong enough to wake the storm within. The words hung in the air between them. You think that's about you? I think Raphael rejected me because he was afraid. Bethany stood, ignoring the way the room spun slightly. He mentioned a prophecy in the forest. What if he saw something, knew something? What if he rejected me not because I'm weak, but because he's not strong enough to handle what I could become? Anita stared at her. That's a lot of what-ifs. I'm dying anyway. Bethany's laugh was bitter. What do I have to lose by believing I might be more than broken? She gathered the documents, tucking them into her pack. When are you leaving? Tonight. Dark moon. No witnesses. Anita grabbed her hand. Let me come with you, at least to the border. No. Bethany squeezed back gently. If this goes wrong, I need you here, safe. Promise me you'll stay. Tears spilled down Anita's cheeks. I can't lose you. You already are. Bethany pulled her sister into a tight embrace. This is my only chance to change that. They held each other until Anita finally pulled away, wiping her eyes. If you survive this, if Blake actually helps you, what then? Bethany's smile was cold and sharp. Then Raphael learns exactly what he threw away. That afternoon, Bethany forced herself to attend the PAC training grounds. She needed to see them one more time, needed to fuel the anger that would carry her through what came next. Raphael was there, demonstrating combat techniques to younger wolves. Carrie stood at his side, radiant and strong, everything an alpha's mate should be. Bethany watched from the shadows as Raphael praised a young wolf's form, as he laughed at something Carrie whispered in his ear, as he moved through his perfect life, completely unburdened by the dying woman on the edges of his territory. Pathetic, isn't it? Bethany turned. Pamela Compton, one of the pack elders, stood beside her. Yes, the old woman's eyes were sharp and knowing. What is? Watching him pretend you never existed. Pamela's voice was soft, but cutting. I was there the night you were born, child. I saw the mark on your shoulder, the ancient symbol that faded before morning. I told your mother you were special. She didn't believe me. Bethany's hand moved unconsciously to her left shoulder, where a faint scar remained. What mark? The crescent moon, wrapped in thorns. Pamela's eyes gleamed. The sign of the moon goddess's chosen. You were never meant for him, Bethany. You were meant for something far greater. Then why did the bond form? Why did the goddess tie me to someone who'd destroy me? Perhaps to push you toward your true path. The elder's smile was mysterious. Sometimes we must be broken before we can be reforged into something stronger. She turned to leave, then paused. The Nightshade Alpha is dangerous. But he's also honorable in ways your precious Raphael never was. If you're smart, if you're brave, you might survive what's coming. You might even thrive. How do you know where I'm going? Pamela's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. Child, I'm old, not blind, and I'm not the only one who'll be glad to see you walk away from this place. She disappeared into the crowd, leaving Bethany staring after her. The sign of the moon goddess's chosen. Could it be true? Or was it just an old woman's fantasy, and a kind lie to comfort a dying wolf? Bethany touched her shoulder again, feeling the faint ridge of the scar beneath her dress. Only one way to find out. Night fell like a shroud. Bethany waited until the pack settled, until the last lights in the pack house went dark. Then she shouldered her pack and slipped out of her cottage for the last time. The forest was silent except for her footsteps and the distant call of a nightbird. And every step away from Crimson Vale territory made the mate bond burn hotter, as if trying to drag her back by force. She gritted her teeth and kept walking. At the forest's edge, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Bethany's hand went to her blade, but then moonlight caught familiar features. Anita, I told you to stay. I'm not coming with you. Her sister held out a small bundle. But I couldn't let you go without this. Bethany unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a silver dagger, its blade etched with protective runes, and a vial of dark liquid. What is this? The dagger was Mother's. The vial is wolfsbane extract, enough to kill an alpha if you need to. Anita's voice shook. I don't trust Blake Jordan to keep you safe, but I trust you to fight for yourself. Bethany pulled her sister close one more time. Thank you. Come back to me, Anita whispered fiercely. However you have to, just come back. I will. I promise. They separated, and Bethany walked into the darkness alone. The journey to Shadowfen River took hours. By the time she heard rushing water, her body was screaming in protest. Blood trickled from her nose, her vision blurred. But she kept moving. The river appeared through the trees, dark and swift, the boundary between everything she'd known and the unknown that might kill her. She didn't hesitate. The moment her foot touched the opposite bank, warning howls erupted around her. Massive shapes emerged from the forest. Nightshade warriors, bigger and more scarred than any wolves she'd ever seen. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, predatory and assessing. One grabbed her arm with crushing force. Another growled low in his throat. "Crimson Veil scent," one snarled. "A spy." "I'm here to see your alpha." Bethany forced her voice steady despite the pain. "Take me to Blake Jordan." They exchanged glances, then hauled her forward through dense forest without another word. As the journey was a blur of pain and shadows, until suddenly they emerged before a great stone fortress, torches blazing along its walls. Through the massive doors, down a long hall lined with weapons and battle trophies, and then the great hall itself. At the far end, seated on a throne of dark wood, was Blake Jordan. He was exactly as she remembered. Larger than life, broader, more dangerous. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, as storm-gray eyes tracked her approach with an intensity that made her breath catch. Scars marked his arms and chest, visible where his shirt hung open. He looked like what he was, a warrior king who'd killed for his crown and would kill again without hesitation. "Alpha," one of the warriors said. "We found her at the river. She says—" "I know what she says." Blake's voice was deep, commanding. His gaze never left Bethany. "I wondered when you would come to me." The words struck her like lightning. He'd expected this. He'd been waiting. If you believe Bethany deserves a second chance at life, please hit subscribe if you haven't. Don't be the person who watches her walk into danger alone. Chapter 4. The enemy of my enemy is my soulmate. Blake rose from his throne, descending the stone steps with predatory grace. The warriors released Bethany and stepped back, leaving her alone before him. Up close, he was overwhelming, raw power contained in flesh and bone, danger radiating from every line of his body, but also something else: recognition, heat. The same electric pull she'd felt at that border meeting 6 months ago, now magnified tenfold. "You're dying." He circled her slowly, like a wolf assessing prey. "I can smell the death on you, the rejected bond eating you alive." "Yes." Bethany forced herself to stand straight despite the agony coursing through her. "That's why I'm here." "And why would I help Raphael Shannon's discarded mate?" He moved behind her, his voice at her ear. "Perhaps I should send your corpse back to him as a message." Bethany turned, meeting his storm-gray eyes directly. Fear pounded through her veins, but she refused to show it. "Then do it." "But I didn't cross Shadowfen River to die at your feet." His eyes flashed with something: approval, interest. "Why did you cross, little wolf?" She reached up slowly, pulling her hair aside to expose her unmarked neck. The skin there was pale, vulnerable, aching for what had been denied. "Mark me." The words came out fierce, desperate, defiant. "Make me yours. I'll give you whatever you want. Revenge on the Alpha who scorned me. War with Crimson Veil if that's what you desire. Information. Loyalty." She paused, then added quietly, "Me." Blake laughed, a dark, genuine sound that sent shivers down her spine. His hand came up, fingers tracing the unmarked skin of her neck with devastating gentleness. His touch burned, but not like the rejected bond. This was different. Electric. Right. "You're dying," he murmured, his thumb brushing her racing pulse. "Desperate. How do I know you're not Raphael's spy? That this isn't some elaborate trap?" "You don't." "Honest." "Oh, at least that's something." His hand remained on her throat, possessive but not threatening. "Tell me, Bethany. Does Raphael know you're here?" The use of her name on his lips sent heat through her. "No one knows. Your sister does." At her sharp intake of breath, he smiled. "Did you think I don't have eyes in Crimson Veil? I've been watching you die for months, waiting to see if you'd be brave enough to come to me. Why would you watch me? Because I felt it at that border meeting. His voice dropped lower, intimate. That pull, that recognition. You were already bound to him, but I felt it anyway. A possibility, a path not taken. Bethany's heart raced. I don't understand. Wolves can have multiple potential mates, Blake said, his eyes holding hers. Possibilities written in the stars, but only one fated bond is chosen by the moon goddess. Raphael was your fated mate by divine design. His thumb traced her jaw. But I could have been your chosen one. The difference is, I would never have been fool enough to reject you. The revelation shook her. All this time she'd thought Raphael was her only chance. But there had been others. This had been possible all along. Here's what I want, Bethany. Blake's hand slid from her face to rest over her heart, feeling it hammer against his palm. You have 3 days to convince me you're not his creature, that you're not here to betray me. If you succeed... His eyes held promises that terrified and thrilled her. I'll give you everything you want. My mark, my protection, revenge on the alpha who threw you away. And if I fail? His smile was sharp as a blade. Then you die here instead of there, though I suspect you'd prefer that anyway. He released her, stepping back, but his eyes still held that challenge that made her blood sing. Oh, fight me, little wolf. Don't submit. Don't beg. Show me the fire I saw in you that day at the border meeting. Show me you're worth starting a war for. Bethany's wolf stirred for the first time in weeks, a faint, fragile flutter of life. 3 days, she said, her voice steady despite everything. You won't regret this. We'll see. He turned to the scarred she-wolf standing near the throne. Jesse, take our guest to the East Tower. See that she's fed and given everything she needs. The warrior, Blake's second, Bethany realized, stepped forward. She was missing her left eye, a vicious scar running from temple to jaw, but her remaining eye was sharp and assessing. This way, Crimson Veil? As Bethany followed her from the great hall, she heard Blake's voice behind her. Oh, and Bethany? She turned. His smile was wolfish. Try not to die before dawn, and I'd hate to waste the entertainment. The East Tower room was surprisingly comfortable. A large bed with furs, a fireplace already burning, a basin of clean water. Jesse leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying her. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can't I be both? The warrior's laugh was harsh. I like you already. Most Crimson Veil wolves are soft, spoiled, but you've got spine. Is that why he's testing me, to see if I break? Partly. Jessie moved into the room, and her movement economical despite the scars marking her body, but also because he needs to know you're real, that this isn't Raphael's plot. It's not. I believe you. Jessie's eye gleamed. I was there that day, at the border meeting. I saw the way our alpha looked at you, like he'd been struck by lightning and didn't know whether to curse it or embrace it. Bethany sank onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. He said he's been watching me. For months. Ever since word spread that Raphael rejected his fated mate. Jessie's expression turned grim. Blake hates Raphael with a passion that burns hotter than any fire. When he heard what Raphael did to you, I thought he'd declare war right then. Why didn't he? Because he's not just muscle and rage. He's smart, patient. Jessie crossed to the window, looking out over the moonlit territory. Raphael called him a savage before the entire council of alphas, tried to have his pack dissolved, and had called him unfit to lead. I read about that. Then you know why Blake would do almost anything to humiliate Raphael. Jessie turned back to face her. Claiming his rejected mate? Marking what Raphael threw away? That's not just revenge, that's poetry. So I'm just a tool for his vendetta. Maybe that's how it started. Jessie's smile was knowing. But I saw his face when you walked into that hall tonight. That's not just revenge hunger. How, that's something else entirely. Before Bethany could respond, a knock sounded. A young wolf entered carrying a tray of food, roasted meat, bread, cheese, fruit. The smell made Bethany's stomach turn. She hadn't been able to keep food down in days. Jessie noticed. "When did you last eat?" "I don't remember." "Try." The warrior's voice softened slightly. "You'll need your strength for tomorrow. Blake doesn't go easy on anyone, even dying she-wolves he's considering claiming." After Jessie left, Bethany forced herself to eat a few bites. To her surprise, the food stayed down. The constant burning in her chest had dulled to a manageable ache. Being here, away from Raphael, away from the constant torture of feeling him with Carrie, it helped. Not much, but enough. She moved to the window, looking out over Nightshade territory. In the distance, she could see lights from the fortress below, hear the sounds of the pack settling for the night. So different from Crimson Vale. Rougher, fiercer, but also honest, real. No one here had looked at her with pity. Even the warriors who'd captured her had treated her like a potential threat, not a broken thing to be handled carefully. A knock at the door startled her. "Come in." Blake entered, and the room suddenly felt much smaller. He'd changed into simple black clothing, his hair loose around his shoulders. Without the throne room's formality, he seemed even more dangerous, more accessible. "I wanted to make sure you hadn't died on us already." Still breathing, Bethany turned from the window to face him. Disappointed? Intrigued. He moved closer, his presence filling the space between them. "Most wolves in your position would be trembling, begging. But you're standing here like you have every right to be in my territory. Don't I? You said you were waiting for me." "I was waiting to see if you had the courage to come." His hand came up, fingers ghosting along her jaw. Now I'm waiting to see if you have the strength to stay." The touch sent electricity through her. Her wolf rose toward him instinctively, that dying, fragile thing suddenly stirring with something like hope. Blake felt it. His eyes darkened. "Your wolf recognizes me. She's barely there anymore. But yes, she'll come back." His certainty was absolute. "When I mark you, when the bond takes hold, she'll rise stronger than before." His Raphael kept her dormant because he was too weak to handle what you truly are. "And what am I?" His smile was slow and devastating. "Something he threw away. Something I'm going to keep." He stepped back, and Bethany felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. "Sleep. Tomorrow, you train with my warriors. Show me you can survive in my pack." "And if I can't?" Blake paused at the door. "Then the 3 days won't matter, because you'll already be dead." After he left, Bethany sank onto the bed, her heart racing. For the first time in months, she felt something other than despair. She felt alive. Chapter 5, He made her beg, I made her mine. Dawn came with a blade at her throat. Bethany woke to find Jessie looming over her bed, dagger pressed to her jugular. The warrior's scarred face was inches from hers, expression cold and assessing. "Training starts now, Crimson Vale." Jessie's smile was all teeth. "Let's see if you're worth the Alpha's time." They dragged her to the training grounds where a dozen Nightshade warriors waited, weapons gleaming in the early light. Bethany's body screamed in protest. She'd barely slept, the rejected bond still burning through her veins. But she forced herself to stand straight. "I'm Jessie Lloyd," the scarred she-wolf announced to the gathered wolves. "The Alpha's second. This is Bethany. She'll spar with me first." The fight was brutal. Jessie moved like lightning, exploiting every weakness. Every moment, Bethany's dying body betrayed her. Blood filled her mouth. She felt ribs crack. She went down hard 3 times. But she got back up. On the 4th takedown, something shifted. Bethany stopped trying to match Jessie's strength and used her smaller size instead, ducking under a strike, sweeping the warrior's legs, moving with desperate grace born of having nothing left to lose. She didn't win, but she lasted longer than anyone expected. When Jessie finally pinned her, there was respect in the warrior's remaining eye. "You're tougher than you look, Crimson Vale." From the shadows at the edge of the grounds, Blake watched, always watching. The second day brought worse trials. They made her run the perimeter, 10 miles of brutal terrain, while her lungs burned and her vision blurred. Every step away from the fortress made the bond to Raphael flare hotter, as if punishing her for the distance. But something unexpected happened. Her wolf, nearly gone when she'd arrived, began to stir. Faint at first, just a whisper of awareness, but growing. And as though proximity to Blake was feeding something inside her that had been starving. That evening, she found herself summoned to his war room. Blake stood over a map-covered table, torchlight playing across his scarred features. He didn't look up when she entered. "You held your own today," he said, "against warriors twice your size, while dying. Impressive." "I'm not dying anymore." The words surprised her, but they were true. The constant agony had dulled to a manageable ache, and her wolf was stronger. "Or not as quickly, anyway." His gray eyes lifted to hers. "No, you're not." He moved around the table toward her, and the air between them thickened with electricity. The pull she'd felt at their first meeting intensified, magnetic, undeniable. "You think you're broken," Blake said quietly, stopping close enough that she could feel his heat. "That Raphael was right about you being weak, unworthy." Bethany's throat tightened. He saw what everyone sees. He saw what he wanted to see. Blake's hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "I think you're dormant, little wolf, waiting for someone strong enough to wake you." The touch sent fire through her, not the burning agony of the rejected bond. This was different. Right. Her wolf rose toward him instinctively. "Your former alpha is a fool," Blake murmured, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. To throw away something precious because he lacked the vision to see its worth. "You don't know me," she whispered. "Don't I?" His smile was dark, intimate. "I knew you the moment our eyes met at that border meeting. I felt the pull even then, despite your bond to him. I've watched you suffer for months, waiting to see if you'd be strong enough to save yourself." Bethany's breath caught. "Oh, why didn't you come for me?" "Because you needed to choose this." His hand slid from her face to her throat, resting over her racing pulse. "Needed to walk away from him on your own. If I'd taken you, you'd always wonder if it was real or just another alpha claiming what he wanted." The words struck something deep inside her. He understood, saw her not as a prize to be won, but as a person who needed agency in her own salvation. "Tell me why you hate him so much," she said. "Raphael." This is more than just pack rivalry." Blake's expression darkened. He moved to the window, staring out over his territory. 2 years ago, the Council of Alphas met to settle a territorial dispute. Raphael stood before them all and called me a savage, unfit to lead. He argued that Nightshade Pack should be dissolved, our lands divided among civilized alphas. His jaw clenched. He tried to destroy everything I built, called me a brute. A monster playing at being alpha. "But you won. I won." He turned back to face her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Because I proved I was stronger, smarter, and better than he ever gave me credit for." His hand reached out, pulling her closer. "Just like you're about to prove you're more than he saw." They were too close now. His mouth was inches from hers, his breath warm against her lips. Every instinct screamed at her to close the distance, to taste him, to feel something other than pain. But fear held her frozen. "You're afraid," Blake said. Not a question. "Terrified," she admitted. "Of trusting again, of being rejected again, of—" "I'm not him, Bethany." His forehead pressed to hers, his voice rough with restraint. "When I claim something as mine, I don't let it go. Ever." The promise in those words made her tremble. But before she could respond, he stepped back, putting distance between them. "There's something you need to know. That's about why Raphael rejected you." Her heart stuttered. "What?" Blake crossed to a locked chest in the corner. He opened it and pulled out an ancient scroll, yellowed with age. 3 months before your binding ceremony, Raphael consulted the Oracle of Moonhaven. She gave him a prophecy. He handed her the scroll. "Read it." Bethany's hands shook as she unrolled the parchment. The text was written in the old language, but she could make out enough. "The Silent One will bring forth power that shakes the foundations of the old order. She who bears no howl carries the voice of ancients. Claimed by strength, she will rise. Claimed by weakness, she will destroy all who deny her." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. "He rejected you because he was afraid," Blake said quietly. "The prophecy told him you'd either elevate him to greatness or destroy everything he'd built. And Raphael, for all his pride, is a coward at heart. He chose the safer path. He chose Carrie. He chose mediocrity." Blake's voice was hard. "He chose comfortable strength over transformative power, and now he'll live with that choice while I—" He moved closer again, his presence overwhelming. "While I claim what he was too weak to hold." Bethany looked up at him, the prophecy still clutched in her hands. "What if it's true? What if I destroy you too?" His laugh was low and dangerous. "Then we'll burn together." But I don't fear your power, Bethany. I welcome it." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, at odds with the fierce hunger in his eyes. "Tomorrow is your third day. At sunset, I'll give you my answer, whether I'll mark you, whether I'll start a war for you." His thumb traced her lower lip. "But tonight, I want you to understand something. This isn't just revenge for me anymore." "What is it then?" "Recognition." His eyes held hers. "Oh, you're not just Raphael's rejected mate. You're not just a tool for vengeance. You're the wolf I felt drawn to 6 months ago. The possibility that's haunted me ever since. And if I mark you tomorrow, it won't be to hurt him." His mouth hovered over hers, so close she could taste his breath. "It'll be because you're mine, and I keep what's mine." He pulled back before she could close the distance, leaving her aching and breathless. "Sleep well, little wolf. Tomorrow, everything changes." After he left, Bethany sank into a chair, the prophecy still in her hands. She who bears no howl carries the voice of ancients. All her life, she'd been told the silence was a curse, a defect, proof she was broken. But what if it was something else entirely? What if she'd never been broken at all, just waiting for someone strong enough to unlock what she truly was? Her wolf stirred inside her, stronger now than it had been in months, not just surviving, growing. She touched her unmarked neck, feeling her pulse race beneath her fingers. One more day until Blake gave his answer. One more day until she either found salvation or met her end. But as she lay down to sleep, for the first time in 4 months, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Terrifying, dangerous, intoxicating hope. Chapter 6. Claimed in front of the man who rejected her. The third day dawned with a message that changed everything. Bethany woke to find Jessie standing at her window, a scroll in hand, her expression grim. "The Alpha wants you to see this before he makes his decision." Bethany took the scroll. It was a formal summons, written in Raphael's distinctive hand, to Blake Jordan, Alpha of Nightshade Pack. "It has come to my attention that Bethany Hudson, a wolf of Crimson Vale by birth and blood, has entered your territory. Her presence there is unlawful. She crossed your borders while her mind was compromised by deteriorating bond sickness. I demand her immediate return. Fail to comply, and you declare war. Raphael Shannon, Alpha of Crimson Vale." Bethany's hands shook as she read it twice. "When did this arrive?" "An hour ago. Blake's response is already on its way back." Jessie's scarred face was unreadable. "He's calling Raphael's bluff." "What did he say?" "You'll find out at sunset." "He's calling a gathering. Both packs. Neutral ground." Jessie's remaining eye gleamed. "He's going to claim you publicly. In front of Raphael. In front of everyone." The room spun. "That's insane? Yes. Brilliant? Also yes." Jessie moved closer. "But you need to understand what you're walking into. This won't be a quiet ceremony. This will be a declaration of war wrapped in a claiming ritual. And every wolf from both territories will be watching. I can handle it. Can you? Jesse's voice turned sharp. Because Raphael will be there, with Carrie. You'll have to watch him watch you get marked by his greatest enemy. Can you handle that without breaking? Bethany met the warrior's gaze steadily. I've been breaking for 4 months while he slept peacefully beside another woman. Tonight, it's his turn. Jesse's fierce smile said she'd given the right answer. They dressed her in ceremonial robes at sunset. Deep crimson silk that left her shoulders bare, her unmarked neck exposed. Her hair was pulled back, revealing the vulnerability of her throat. She looked like a sacrifice, or a bride. Her hands trembled as servants fastened the last clasp, but her reflection in the mirror showed someone different from the dying wolf who'd crossed Shadowfen River 3 days ago. Her eyes were brighter. Her skin had lost some of that deathly pallor. And her wolf stirred just beneath the surface, stronger than it had been in months. They're ready for you, Jesse said from the doorway. The claiming grounds lay between territories, a sacred neutral space under the open sky. Torches blazed in a great circle, illuminating 2 separate groups of wolves, Nightshade on one side, Crimson Veil on the other. The air crackled with tension, violence barely restrained, and there at the head of Crimson Veil's warriors stood Raphael. His green eyes found her immediately, widening in shock. She looked different, stronger. The dying broken wolf he'd rejected was gone. In her place stood someone who'd survived his cruelty and emerged harder for it. Carrie stood beside him, her triumphant smile faltering as she took in Bethany's transformation. "This is madness," Raphael snarled, striding forward. The gathered wolves fell silent. "She belongs to Crimson Veil. She's bound to our pack." "She belongs to no one." Blake appeared beside Bethany, his presence overwhelming. His hand settled possessively on her lower back. "Except perhaps to me. Once I mark her." He turned to face Raphael fully, and the hatred between them was palpable. "Unless you want to claim her now, Raphael, after 4 months of letting her die, after publicly calling her broken and unworthy, please try to stop me. I've been hoping for an excuse." Raphael's face darkened with rage. "You would start a war over damaged goods? I would start a war over a treasure you were too blind to recognize." Blake's voice carried to every wolf present. "But please, give me a reason." Raphael turned to Bethany, and for a moment, something like regret flickered in his eyes. Then it hardened to anger. "Bethany!" His alpha voice rang out, commanding and absolute. "Come here, now!" Once that voice would have compelled her obedience. The mate bond would have dragged her to his side regardless of her will. Now Bethany didn't move. Raphael's shock was visible. He tried again, power flooding his words. "I command you." "You have no power over me anymore." Bethany's voice was steady, clear, carrying across the silent gathering. "The bond you rejected is dying. You have no claim." "You would betray your pack?" Raphael's rage vibrated through every word. "For vengeance? For him?" "You betrayed me first." Bethany stepped forward, as her eyes blazing. "You let me die slowly, painfully while you slept beside her, while you called me a mistake, a reminder you wanted gone." She gestured to Carrie, who had gone pale. "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm surviving, something you never wanted me to do." Carrie moved closer to Raphael, but her expression was uncertain now, threatened. "If you do this," Raphael said, his voice low and dangerous, "there's no coming back. You'll be my enemy." "I already am." Bethany turned her back on him, and walking toward the ceremonial circle where Blake waited. "I have been since the moment you called me unworthy." The ancient ritual began. Both packs formed a circle around them, witnesses to what would either be a claiming or a catastrophe. Blake stood in the center, magnificent and deadly in the firelight. His storm-gray eyes tracked her every movement as she entered the circle. "Kneel," he commanded softly. Bethany dropped to her knees before him, exposing her neck. This was vulnerability. Trust, everything Raphael had never earned. Blake's hand threaded through her hair, tilting her head back. His eyes held hers, burning with hunger and possession and something deeper, something that looked like reverence. "Before both packs, I make my claim." His voice rang out clear and strong. "Bethany Hudson, you are mine, from this moment until the world ends. I claim you not as vengeance, not as a prize, but as my equal, my mate, my Luna." He looked directly at Raphael as he continued. What was rejected, I treasure. What was called broken, I see as whole. What was thrown away, I will keep forever." His mouth descended to her throat, lips tracing the unmarked skin with devastating tenderness. Then his canines lengthened, deadly sharp, and he struck. The pain was exquisite. His teeth pierced her flesh deep and claiming, marking her as his. But something else happened. Power exploded through Bethany like lightning, starting at the mark and radiating outward in devastating waves. And her wolf, dormant and dying for months, erupted with a force that shook the ground beneath them. Bethany threw her head back and screamed, not in agony, but in release. And for the first time in her life, sound came with it. A howl. Not the broken silence she'd always known, but a true, powerful howl that shattered the night. Stones cracked beneath them. Trees trembled. Wolves from both packs staggered, covering their ears as the sound washed over them like a physical force. Yeah, the transformation took her. Bethany's body shifted, bones reforming, power surging through every cell. When she emerged, gasps echoed around the circle. She was magnificent, massive, larger than any she-wolf present. Her fur gleamed silver as moonlight, otherworldly and radiant. Ancient markings spiraled across her coat, symbols no one had seen in generations, the mark of the moon goddess herself. Bethany lifted her muzzle and howled again. The sound was pure power, pure rage, pure triumph. How she'd never been broken. She'd been waiting, dormant, for the right mate to awaken the storm within. Across the circle, Raphael stood frozen, his face ashen. Carrie had gone deathly pale. They were staring at what he'd rejected, what he'd thrown away. A silver wolf, the rarest, most powerful wolf the realm had seen in a century. The prophecy made flesh. Blake shifted beside her, a massive black wolf with silver eyes. He pressed against her, claiming her before both packs. His howl joined hers, twining together in a harmony that spoke of completion, of rightness, of a bond that would never break. The rejected bond to Raphael shattered completely. Bethany felt it snap like a severed rope, the pain vanishing in an instant. In its place, a new bond formed, pure and strong and right. She was free. When they shifted back to human form, Blake pulled her against him immediately, his mark gleaming on her throat, and silver patterns spiraled from it across her shoulders and down her spine, visible proof of the moon goddess's blessing. "Mine," he growled, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My mate, my Luna, my equal." Bethany turned in his arms to face Raphael. Her former alpha stood motionless, staring at her transformation with an expression of absolute devastation. He'd rejected the moon goddess's chosen, thrown away a silver wolf, called perfection broken because he'd been too weak, too afraid to claim what he didn't understand. "You were right about one thing," Bethany said, her voice carrying across the shocked silence. "We would have been a terrible match, because you never deserved me." She turned back to Blake, rising on her toes to kiss him. His arms wrapped around her, holding her like she was precious, irreplaceable. When they broke apart, Blake addressed both packs. "Let it be known, Bethany is Luna of Nightshade Pack. Any who challenge this, challenge me." His eyes swept the crowd, daring anyone to object. "Any who threaten her, threaten everything I hold dear, and I promise you, I protect what's mine." No one spoke. No one moved. Raphael stood in the circle, broken not by physical defeat, but by the devastating realization of what he'd lost. Bethany had been perfect, his fated mate, marked by the moon goddess herself, meant for greatness beyond measure, and he'd thrown her away like garbage. Blake took Bethany's hand, and then together they walked through the parted nightshade wolves. Warriors bowed their heads in respect and awe as their new Luna passed. Behind them, Raphael remained kneeling in the blood-stained circle, watching his greatest mistake walk away with his sworn enemy. And Bethany didn't look back once. Subscribe if you think Raphael needs to see what he lost, because Bethany's rise deserves witnesses who'll make sure he never forgets. Chapter 7. The Power He Never Knew She Had. The silver wolf that stared back from the moonlit pool was still a stranger. Bethany shifted back to human form, trembling as she studied her reflection. Blake's mark gleamed on her neck, dark and permanent against her pale skin. But it was more than a bite. Silver patterns spiraled from the mark across her shoulders and down her spine, glowing faintly in the darkness. The moon goddess's blessing made visible. "Beautiful," Blake said from behind her, his voice rough with possession and pride. She turned to face him. He'd shifted back as well, gloriously bare in the moonlight, every scarred muscle on display. The bond between them hummed, complete and unbreakable. For the first time in months, there was no pain, only rightness. "I don't understand," she whispered. "How is this possible? The prophecy—" "You were never broken, Bethany." Blake moved closer, his fingers tracing the silver markings on her skin. "Your wolf was dormant, waiting for a mate strong enough to awaken her." His hand cupped her face. "Raphael was your fated bond, chosen by the moon goddess, but I—" His eyes burned into hers. "I am your true mate, the one you were meant to choose. The rejected bond is gone." His thumb brushed her lips. "I can feel it. You're free of him completely now." It was true. The constant burning, the phantom pain, the terrible awareness of Raphael, all of it had vanished the moment Blake's mark took hold. She was finally, blessedly free. "My Luna," Blake said, dropping to one knee before her. "My mate, my equal." The gesture stole her breath. An alpha kneeling to his mate, acknowledging her as his partner in power. Bethany pulled him up, her hands framing his scarred face. "Yours," she said fiercely, "completely yours." His kiss was fire and possession. He claimed her mouth the way he'd claimed her neck, thoroughly, ruthlessly, leaving no doubt who she belonged to. Bethany responded with equal hunger, months of pain and loneliness transforming into desperate need. Blake lifted her easily, carrying her toward the fortress. "I'm taking you to my chambers," he growled against her throat, "and I'm going to claim every inch of you until you forget his name." "I've already forgotten it," she breathed. His rooms were magnificent. Dark wood and rich furs, a massive bed that dominated the space. He laid her down with surprising gentleness, his eyes burning as they traveled over her body. "Tell me you want this," he said, his voice strained with restraint. "Tell me you choose this. Choose me." "I choose you." Bethany pulled him down to her. "I want you, Blake. All of you." What followed was primal and passionate, a claiming that went beyond the physical. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a vow. He worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, drawing sounds from her she'd never made before. When he finally entered her, filling her completely, they both gasped at the perfection of it. "Mine," he growled, moving inside her with deep, possessive thrusts. "Yours," she moaned, her nails raking down his back. "Always yours." The bond between them flared brighter with every movement, twining their souls together until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. When release crashed through them both, it was devastating, pleasure so intense it bordered on pain. Their wolves howled in unison as the mate bond solidified completely. Afterward, Blake held her against his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her glowing skin. "You're still glowing," he murmured. She was. Silver light emanated from her skin, faint but visible, the moon goddess's power settling into her bones. A sharp knock at the door shattered the peace. "Alpha," Jesse's voice called urgently. "Message from Crimson Vale." Blake growled but rose, pulling on pants before opening the door. His second handed him a sealed letter, her expression grim. And Bethany wrapped herself in furs and joined him as he read, watching his face darken with rage. "What does it say?" He handed her the letter. Raphael's handwriting was sharp, angry slashes across the page. "The wolf Bethany belongs to Crimson Veil Pack by birth and blood. Her crossing into your territory was made under duress, her mind compromised by bond sickness. The claiming ceremony was unlawful. I demand her immediate return. This is your final warning. Return her or face the consequences." Now Bethany laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "He thinks I'll come crawling back." Blake's hand settled possessively on her waist. "What do you want to do, Luna? This is your choice." She took the letter and a quill, writing her response in steady, bold strokes. "I am exactly where I choose to be. I am home. If you want war, Raphael, bring it. You'll learn what you rejected." She signed it simply, Bethany Jordan, Luna of Nightshade Pack. Blake read it over her shoulder, his smile fierce and proud. War it is then." "Good." Bethany turned in his arms. "I want him to see what he threw away. I want him to watch while I stand beside you and realize he could have had this, had me. But he chose his pride over his perfect mate." Blake kissed her deeply. "Then we'll give him a show he'll never forget." Over the following days, Blake taught her to wield her power. Her wolf was massive, strong, faster than anything she'd imagined. Yet the silver markings weren't just decorative. They enhanced her abilities, let her move like moonlight, strike like lightning. She trained with Nightshade warriors who now looked at her with awe and respect. Jessie pushed her hard, but Bethany met every challenge. Her body, once dying and weak, now thrummed with power. She discovered she could sense other wolves' emotions through proximity, could compel obedience with her voice, not through alpha command, but through something older, and divine authority. "You're not just any Luna," Jessie said one afternoon after Bethany had stopped a fight between warriors with a single word. "You're something else entirely." That evening, Bethany stood in Blake's war room, studying maps of both territories. He came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" "That Raphael will come for me, not because he wants me back, but because he can't stand losing to you." "Let him come." Blake's voice was dark with promise. "I'll end him if he tries to take you." "No." Bethany turned to face him. "When he comes, and he will, I want to face him myself. I want him to see what I've become, what he could never have handled." Blake studied her face, then nodded slowly. "You've changed. Not just the power, something deeper." "I'm not afraid anymore." She touched the mark on her neck. "For months, I lived in terror. Terror of dying, terror of being forgotten, terror of being exactly what he called me. Broken." Her eyes met Blake's. "But I'm not broken. I never was." "No, you weren't." He kissed her forehead. "You were a weapon waiting to be forged, and now—" His smile was wolfish. "Now you're unstoppable." A commotion outside drew their attention. Shouting, the sound of horses. They moved to the window together. In the courtyard below, a small group had arrived under a peace banner. Bethany's breath caught. Anita. Her sister stood among Nightshade warriors, looking small and terrified, but determined. "That's my sister," Bethany said, already moving toward the door. She found Anita in the great hall, flanked by guards. The moment their eyes met, her sister's composure cracked. "Beth." Bethany crossed the distance and pulled Anita into her arms. "You shouldn't have come here. It's not safe. I had to see for myself." Anita pulled back, her eyes widening as she took in Bethany's transformation. "The stories! They said you were glowing, that you shifted into a silver wolf. I thought they were exaggerating, but—" She touched Bethany's face wonderingly. "You look alive. Actually alive." "I am," Bethany smiled. "More alive than I've ever been." "He's planning something," Anita said urgently, her voice dropping. "Raphael, he's been locked in meetings with his council for days, and Carrie—" She hesitated. What about Carrie? She left him 2 days after the claiming ceremony. Couldn't handle being second choice to a ghost. Anita's expression was grim. Raphael's unraveling. The pack is restless. They saw what you became. Some are questioning why he rejected you. Blake appeared beside Bethany, his presence commanding. Anita's eyes widened slightly at the sight of him. Your sister is welcome here as long as she needs, he said. Any family of my Luna's is under my protection. I can't stay, Anita said quickly. I just needed to see her, to know she was really okay. She turned back to Bethany. But you should know, Raphael's not just angry. He's obsessed. He keeps talking about the prophecy, about how he made a mistake. Some in the pack think he's going to invoke the ancient rite. Bethany's blood ran cold. No, he wouldn't. What's the ancient rite? Blake's voice was sharp. A law from the old times, Bethany explained, her voice tight. If an alpha believes his fated mate was claimed unlawfully, he can challenge for her return, trial by combat. Winner takes the contested mate. Blake's expression turned deadly. Let him try. You don't understand. Bethany gripped his arm. The ancient rite means combat to the death. No yield, no mercy. One of you would die. Then he dies. Blake's voice was absolute. I'm not giving you back. I won't let you fight over me like I'm property, Bethany said fiercely. Then what do you suggest, Luna? Before she could answer, and a horn sounded in the distance. 3 long blasts, a formal challenge. They moved to the battlements. In the valley below, Raphael stood with a small contingent of Crimson Veil wolves. In his hand, he held the Crimson Banner, the ancient symbol of trial by combat. His voice carried up to them, magically amplified. Blake Jordan, I invoke the ancient rite, trial by combat for the contested mate, 3 days hence at the sacred dueling grounds. The victor claims Bethany Hudson! The challenge hung in the air like a death sentence. Blake's hand found Bethany's. I accept, he called back, and when I kill you, Raphael, your pack will know exactly what kind of fool their alpha was. After Raphael's contingent left, Bethany turned to Blake, her heart in her throat. I won't lose you, she said. Not now, not after everything. You won't. He pulled her close. Because I'm fighting for what I chose to keep. Oh, and he's fighting for what he realized he lost. That makes me stronger. But as they stood together watching the sunset, Bethany felt the weight of what was coming. One way or another, in 3 days, this would end. Chapter 8. He wants her back. She wants revenge. The 3 days before the duel were torture. Blake trained relentlessly, brutal sparring sessions that left him bloodied and exhausted. Bethany watched from the shadows, her heart in her throat every time he took a hit. The thought of losing him now, after finally finding happiness, was unbearable. But there were tender moments, too. Late at night, when the fortress slept, Blake would come to their chambers. He'd hold her close, his touch gentle despite the violence he prepared for. They'd make love slowly, savoring each other, the bond between them deepening into something that transcended the physical. One night, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Blake's voice was uncharacteristically vulnerable. If I lose... He couldn't finish the sentence. Bethany rolled to face him, her hand cupping his scarred cheek. You won't, because I choose you, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. He's strong, Bethany. And he's fighting for what he realizes he lost. That kind of desperation makes wolves dangerous. And you're fighting for what you chose to keep. She kissed him fiercely. That makes you stronger. You're not afraid of what I am. He was. That's the difference. But doubt gnawed at her. Not in Blake's strength, but in the fundamental wrongness of being fought over like territory to be claimed. On the second day, Anita returned under a peace banner. But she wasn't alone. Pamela Compton and the elder from Crimson Veil came with her. The old woman's eyes were sharp as ever as she was brought before Bethany in the great hall. I came to tell you something you need to know, Pamela said, without preamble, about why Raphael really rejected you. Blake tensed beside Bethany, but she waved him to silence. Tell me. Pamela pulled out an ancient scroll, older even than the prophecy Blake had shown her. 3 months before your binding ceremony, Raphael consulted the oracle. Oh, but there were 2 prophecies given that night. He only told you about one. The elder's voice was grave. The first said you would bring forth power that shakes foundations, that you'd either elevate him to greatness or destroy everything he built. We know that part, Blake said. But there was a second prophecy. Pamela unrolled the scroll. Listen. The silent one bound to weakness will wither and die. The silent one bound to strength will rise as the realm's salvation. She will bear a child who ends the age of blood and brings forth the age of peace. Bethany's breath caught. A child? Raphael was terrified, Pamela continued, not just of your power, but of what it meant. A child who ends the age of blood? That threatened everything he'd built his identity on. Strength through dominance, power through fear. He couldn't handle the idea that his heir would bring peace instead of conquest. So he rejected her to avoid his own evolution, Blake said, at his voice dark with anger. Exactly. Pamela's eyes gleamed. He chose stagnation over transformation, weakness over strength, and now he realizes what that choice cost him. After the elder left, Bethany stood at the window, one hand pressed to her stomach. A child. The prophecy spoke of a child. Blake came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. Are you? No, not yet. She leaned back against him. But the prophecy says I will be. That our child will change everything, Blake finished. His hand covered hers on her stomach. Good. Let them fear it. Let Raphael understand that what he rejected wasn't just you, it was the future itself. That night, Bethany made a decision. She crossed into neutral territory under a peace banner, heading for the Crimson Veil camp. Blake had tried to stop her, but she'd insisted. This needed to end on her terms. The guards brought her before Raphael's tent. He emerged immediately, and his green eyes widening at the sight of her. Bethany. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. I came to tell you to withdraw the challenge. He laughed bitterly. So you can stay with him? With my enemy? So no one has to die over your mistake. She stepped closer, her silver markings glowing faintly in the torchlight. Look at me, Raphael. Really look. He did. And she saw the moment reality crashed into him. What he'd rejected, what he'd lost. Oh, she was everything he'd needed in a Luna. Strong, powerful, marked by the moon goddess herself, and he'd thrown her away because he couldn't see past his own fear. I was wrong, he said hoarsely. About you. About everything. Come back to me. We can fix this. Some things once broken can never be fixed. Her voice was cold as winter. You called me unworthy, weak, broken. You let me die slowly while you slept with another woman. Why would I ever return to that? Because I'm your fated mate. You were, she corrected. Past tense. That bond is dead. You killed it when you rejected me. Blake is my mate now. My choice. My love. The word hung between them. Love. Not obligation. Not survival. Love. Raphael's face twisted with anguish. I'll win tomorrow. I'll claim you back. The ancient right gives me that power. No. Bethany's eyes flashed silver. You won't, because I won't be a prize fought over like property. I won't stand on the sidelines while 2 alphas decide my fate. She leaned close, her voice deadly soft. Tomorrow, I end this myself, and you'll learn what you rejected. She turned and walked away, leaving Raphael staring after her, finally understanding the magnitude of his loss. When she returned to Nightshade territory, Blake was waiting, fury and fear warring in his expression. You shouldn't have gone alone, he growled, pulling her into his arms. I needed to face him. To make him understand. She looked up at her mate, her love. Tomorrow, when you meet him in that circle, I want you to know something. What? I don't want you because you saved me. I don't want you because of the bond. She kissed him deeply. I want you because I love you, because you're the best man I've ever known, and I choose you, Blake Jordan, every single day for the rest of my life. His eyes shone with emotion. And I choose you, Bethany. my Luna, my heart, my everything. They pledged themselves to each other that night, not through ancient ritual, but through whispered vows and tender touches. And Bethany prepared for what was to come. She would not be won. She would not be claimed. She would claim herself. Dawn came too quickly. The sacred dueling grounds were ancient stone, stained dark from centuries of blood. Both packs formed a circle around the fighting pit. Crimson Veil on one side, Nightshade on the other. The tension was suffocating. One wrong move, and this would become a massacre. Bethany stood at the front of Nightshade's ranks, her heart pounding as Blake and Raphael entered the circle. They were magnificent and terrifying. Two alphas in their prime, scarred and powerful, radiating lethal intent. Blake's storm-gray eyes never left Raphael. Raphael's green gaze burned with desperate determination. The elder officiating intoned, "For the contested mate, trial by combat, to the death." They didn't wait for the signal. Raphael struck first, shifting mid-lunge into his golden wolf form. Blake met him as a massive black wolf, and they collided with earth-shaking force. The sound of tearing flesh and snarling rage filled the air. It was brutal, visceral. They fought with the fury of ancient enemies, claws rending, teeth tearing. Blood sprayed across white stone. Raphael went for Blake's throat. Blake twisted away and ripped into his shoulder. They broke apart, circling, then crashed together again. Bethany felt every wound Blake took through their bond. Each slash of claws was fire across her skin. When Raphael's teeth sank into Blake's flank, she gasped, doubling over with phantom pain. "Luna," Jessie whispered beside her. "You can't interfere. It's forbidden." But watching was agony. The bond screamed at her to help, to protect her mate. The fight escalated. They were evenly matched. Raphael faster, Blake stronger, both driven by desperate need. Blood soaked the ground. Both wolves were limping now, exhausted, but relentless. Then Raphael made a mistake. He overextended on a lunge. Blake caught him by the throat, fangs closing around his windpipe. One crushing bite, and it would be over. But Blake hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Raphael used that moment to twist free, his claws raking deep across Blake's face, dangerously close to his eye. They separated, both barely standing, both ready to kill or die. Bethany couldn't breathe. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. They lunged at each other one final time, mouths open, going for killing strikes. "Enough!" The word tore from Bethany's throat with supernatural force. Divine authority that made every wolf present freeze in place. Before anyone could stop her, she threw off her cloak and stepped into the circle. Gasps erupted from both packs. Ancient law was absolute. Only combatants could enter the dueling grounds. By stepping in, she'd declared herself won. Chapter 9. The Queen chooses her king. "Bethany, no!" Blake's mental voice roared through their bond. But she was done being fought over, done being property to be claimed. Power surged through her veins as she called her wolf. The transformation was instantaneous and devastating. Silver light exploded outward as her massive form emerged, larger than before. The moon goddess's markings blazed like living fire across her fur. Both alphas froze, staring. Bethany planted herself between them, and her otherworldly power making the air shimmer. When she spoke, her voice echoed with divine authority that made every wolf present drop their eyes in submission. "I am not a prize to be won." The words reverberated across the dueling grounds. "I am not property. I am not a possession to be claimed by whoever bleeds the most." She turned her massive silver head toward Raphael, and he actually backed up a step. "You called me broken, weak, unworthy." Her voice was cold as death. But I was never broken. I was waiting. The moon goddess marked me because I was meant for greatness. Greatness you couldn't see because you were too blind, too proud, too small." Raphael shifted back to human form, naked and bleeding, his face anguished. "Bethany, please. You had your chance." She shifted back as well, standing between them in her ceremonial robes, power radiating from every pore. "You rejected me. You let me die." Had you chose another while I suffered? Her silver eyes bored into his. Some things, once broken, can never be fixed. She turned to Blake, who had also shifted back. He was bloodied and exhausted, but his eyes held only love and pride. I choose you, she said clearly, loud enough for every wolf to hear. Not because of the bond, not because you saved me, but because you saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I was called worthless. You chose me first. She crossed to him, taking his hand. Blake Jordan, I choose you every day for the rest of my life. The bond between them flared brilliant silver, visible to everyone present. The moon goddess's blessing made manifest. Blake pulled her close, ignoring his wounds. My Luna, my love, my choice. Their kiss was witnessed by both packs, a declaration more powerful than any mark, any fight, any ancient law. When they broke apart, Bethany looked back at Raphael. He was on his knees, broken not by physical defeat, but by the devastating realization of what he'd lost. She'd been perfect, his fated mate, marked by the moon goddess herself, meant for greatness beyond measure. And he'd thrown her away like garbage. I came here tonight to tell you both something, Bethany said, her voice carrying across the silent gathering. The ancient right is void. I was never unlawfully claimed. I crossed into Nightshade territory of my own free will. And I offered myself to Blake of my own choice. She gestured to the elder who'd officiated. According to the oldest laws, older even than the ancient right, a wolf who chooses her own mate cannot be contested. My choice is sacred, binding, final. The elder nodded slowly. The Luna speaks truth. The law of conscious choice supersedes all challenge rights. She has chosen. The matter is settled. Raphael's face crumbled. You would condemn me to live with this, knowing what I lost? You condemned yourself. Bethany's voice was gentler now, but final. When you let fear rule you instead of courage. When you chose comfort over transformation. She paused. Go home, Raphael. Go home and live with what you've done. But never come for me again. What if I can't let you go? His voice broke. What if seeing you with him destroys me? Then that's your burden to carry. She met his eyes steadily. Not mine. Not anymore. Blake's hand tightened on hers. And together they turned and walked through the parted Nightshade wolves. Warriors bowed their heads in respect and awe as their Luna passed. Behind them, Raphael remained kneeling in the blood-stained circle, watching his greatest mistake walk away with his sworn enemy. And Bethany didn't look back once. But as they reached the edge of the gathering, a commotion erupted. A scout burst through the crowd, his face pale with terror. Alpha! Luna! At the western border, we're under attack. Blake's expression turned deadly. By who? Unknown pack. They're moving fast, targeting our outer settlements. The scout's voice shook. They're slaughtering everyone. Women, children, elders. No mercy. Bethany felt the blood drain from her face. This was no ordinary raid. How many? Blake demanded. At least 50, maybe more. They move like shadows. We can't... He didn't finish. A howl split the night, not from either gathered pack, but from the forest beyond. A sound that made Bethany's blood run cold. It was wrong, twisted, like a wolf's howl filtered through something dark and ancient. Blake's second, Jesse, appeared at his side. Alpha, we need to move, now. If we don't defend the settlements, go! Raphael's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned. The former Alpha of Crimson Vale stood, still bleeding from the fight, but his expression was determined. You heard the scout. Your pack is under attack. But go defend them. Raphael looked directly at Bethany, something like redemption flickering in his eyes. I may have failed you, but I won't fail to do what's right. He turned to his own warriors. Crimson Vale, we fight alongside Nightshade tonight, not for alliance, not for politics, because wolves are dying, and that matters more than our petty hatreds. Blake hesitated only a moment, then nodded sharply. Accepted. We move as one force. They ran. Both packs were united for the first time in generations, racing toward the sounds of battle. Bethany kept pace with Blake, her silver wolf form cutting through the darkness like moonlight. They emerged at the western settlement to find carnage. The attackers were like nothing Bethany had ever seen. Wolves, yes, but wrong. Their eyes glowed red instead of gold. Their movements were jerky, unnatural. And they fought with a savagery that went beyond survival or territory. They fought to destroy.
What are they?
Bethany gasped. The corrupted. Pamela's voice came from behind them. The old elder had followed, her face grim. I'd hoped the stories were just legends. Wolves who gave themselves to dark magic in exchange for power. They serve no pack, no law, only chaos. Blake shifted to human form long enough to bark orders. Jesse, take the left flank. Raphael, right side. Protect the civilians first. For a moment, Raphael and Blake stood side by side. It had two alphas united against a common enemy. Then they shifted and plunged into battle. The fight was brutal. The corrupted were strong, fast, and felt no pain. But they weren't organized. They had power, but no strategy. Bethany fought like she'd never fought before, her silver wolf tearing through enemy after enemy, her divine markings seeming to burn the corrupted wherever she struck. She realized with shock that her power was their weakness. Yet the moon goddess's blessing was anathema to their dark magic. She threw back her head and howled, that earth-shaking divine sound, and watched the corrupted stagger, their formation breaking. Again! Blake's voice in her mind. Whatever you're doing, do it again! She howled once more, pouring all her power into the sound. This time, several corrupted actually fell, clutching their heads, their red eyes flickering. The tide turned. With the corrupted weakened, and the combined might of Nightshade and Crimson Veil overwhelmed them. One by one, the enemy fell until finally, silence descended. Bethany shifted back, exhausted, her body trembling. Blake was at her side instantly, pulling her into his arms. You saved us, he murmured. Your power. It's the key to fighting them. Not just me. She looked across the battlefield to where Raphael stood among his warriors, bloodied but alive. All of us together. The settlement was devastated, but they'd saved most of the civilians. Healers moved among the wounded, while warriors checked the perimeter. Raphael approached slowly, warily. He stopped a respectful distance away. Thank you, Blake said, the words clearly difficult. For coming. For fighting beside us. Raphael nodded, then looked at Bethany. I came because it was right, not to win you back. I understand now that's impossible. His voice was heavy with regret, but maybe I can start earning forgiveness. Not from you. I don't deserve that. From myself. Then do better, Bethany said quietly. Be the alpha your pack deserves. Learn from your mistakes instead of drowning in them. Something like hope flickered in his eyes. I will. I swear it. He turned to leave, then paused. The corrupted. They'll come again. This was just a scouting force. There will be more. Then we'll face them, Blake said. Together, if necessary. Raphael met his eyes. I won't pretend we're friends. But for this? For protecting our people from that darkness, I'll stand with you. They clasped forearms. Not friendship, but acknowledgement. Respect born of necessity. After Crimson Veil departed, Blake led Bethany back toward Nightshade Fortress. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. This changes everything, she said softly. It does. Blake's arm was around her waist. The corrupted are a threat to all packs. We'll need to unite. Form alliances. And Raphael? He made a choice tonight, the right one. Blake looked down at her. Maybe there's hope for him yet. Bethany leaned against him, exhausted but alive. What happens now? Now? Blake's smile was tired but genuine. Now we rebuild, we prepare, we protect our people. He kissed her forehead, and we do it together. As they entered the fortress, Jesse met them with news that made Bethany's breath catch. Luna, the healer needs to see you. She says it's urgent. They found the healer in her chambers, her expression both joyful and awed. "I felt it during the battle," the old woman said. "The surge of power from you, Luna. It was different, deeper." She took Bethany's hand, pressing it to her own chest. "You carry new life. The prophecy begins to fulfill itself." Bethany's hand flew to her stomach. "I'm with child," the healer confirmed. "Very early still, but unmistakable." Blake's eyes widened, then filled with wonder, and he dropped to his knees before her, his hands covering hers on her still flat belly. "Our child," he whispered, "the one the prophecy spoke of." "The one who will end the age of blood," Bethany said, tears streaming down her face, "and bring the age of peace." He stood and pulled her close, his joy evident despite the exhaustion, despite the battles yet to come. "Then we fight," he said fiercely, "for this child, for our future, for the peace the prophecy promises." Bethany kissed him, as pouring all her love and determination into it. They'd faced rejection, death, and darkness, but they'd emerged stronger, together. Epilogue. From rejected mate to crowned goddess. 1 year later. Bethany stood on the balcony of Nightshade's great hall, surveying the transformed landscape below. The fortress had expanded, its walls now encompassing not just Nightshade territory, but sections of what had once been contested lands. But this wasn't conquest. It was unity. Representatives from 5 packs now trained in the courtyard below, Nightshade, Crimson Veil, and 3 others who joined the alliance against the corrupted. Warriors from different territories sparred together, learning each other's techniques, building bonds that transcended old rivalries. Her hand rested on the swell of her belly, 7 months pregnant now. The child moved beneath her palm, strong and active. Their bond was so powerful she could feel the baby's wolf already, fierce and bright, a perfect blend of both parents. "You should be resting." "Ah, Luna." Blake's arms wrapped around her from behind, his hands covering hers on their child. His mark on her neck gleamed in the afternoon sun, the silver patterns that spiraled from it now a familiar, beloved sight. "I don't need rest." She leaned back against his solid warmth. "I need to remind the council why they bow to us now." His laugh rumbled through her, as if they could forget. The transformation of the past year had been extraordinary. After the corrupted attack, a word had spread of the Silver Luna whose howl could weaken dark magic. Packs across the realm had sent emissaries, seeking alliance, protection, guidance. Bethany had become a legend, the moon goddess's chosen, the wolf who'd been rejected and risen to become the most powerful Luna the realm had seen in generations. But more than that, she'd become a unifying force. Where old alliances had been built on fear and dominance, the new alliance was built on mutual protection and shared purpose. The council meets in an hour," Blake murmured against her hair. "Are you ready?" "I was born ready." She turned in his arms, her silver eyes gleaming. "Though I might need help getting into that dress. Our daughter seems to think my ribs make excellent punching bags." "She takes after her mother." Blake's hand pressed gently where the baby kicked. Strong, fierce, already making her presence known. They'd learned the child's gender 3 months ago, a daughter. The prophecy's promised child who would end the age of blood. Already her birth was anticipated across the realm, some with hope, others with fear. Change always frightened those who benefited from the old ways. The Council of Alphas met in the Grand Hall, a structure built specifically for gatherings of this magnitude. 12 alphas sat around an enormous circular table, each representing their pack and territories. And Bethany entered in full Luna regalia, deep sapphire silk that accommodated her pregnancy, silver embroidery that matched her divine markings. Her hair was crowned with a circlet of moonstone and silver, marking her not just as Blake's Luna, but as the moon goddess's chosen representative. Every alpha present rose in respect as she entered. Every alpha except one. Raphael remained seated at the far end of the table, but his expression wasn't defiant. It was broken, respectful. And he'd changed over the past year. Aged, the vibrant, arrogant alpha who'd rejected her was gone. In his place sat someone humbled by consequence, Bethany took her seat beside Blake at the head table. Blake's hand found hers beneath the table, a private gesture of support and love. "The council recognizes Luna Bethany Jordan," the officiating elder announced, "chosen of the moon goddess, keeper of the ancient light, a mother of the prophecy." "Thank you," Bethany's voice carried clearly through the hall. "I've called this gathering to discuss the increasing corrupted attacks on our borders. 3 more settlements were hit last week. We lost 17 wolves." Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled alphas. "The alliance has proven effective," she continued, "but we need to go further. The corrupted don't respect pack boundaries or old rivalries. They see us as divided, weak. We need to show them we're neither." "What do you propose, Luna?" One of the allied alphas, Donald Holland of the Mountain Ridge Pack, leaned forward with interest. "A unified defense force, warriors from all packs, training together, responding together. Not as separate entities cooperating, but as one force with one purpose." Her eyes swept the table. "We need to stop thinking like 12 separate packs and start thinking like one realm." "That's unprecedented," another alpha protested. We've never faced extinction before either," Blake cut in, his voice hard. "The corrupted grow stronger, more organized. They're not just random attacks anymore. They're testing us, finding our weaknesses." "And they'll keep finding them as long as we remain fractured," Bethany added. "The prophecy speaks of ending the age of blood. That doesn't just mean external threats. It means ending the constant pack wars, the territorial disputes that weaken us all." She stood, and her pregnant form commanding despite, or perhaps because of, her condition. "I'm not asking you to give up your pack identities. I'm asking you to add a layer above it, to see yourselves as part of something larger." Her hand rested on her belly. "My daughter will be born into this world in 2 months. What kind of realm will she inherit? One still tearing itself apart over old hatreds, or one united, strong enough to face any darkness?" The silence was profound. Then Raphael stood, and every eye turned to him. "Luna Bethany speaks truth." His voice was rough, heavy with regret. "I know something about the cost of pride, of choosing fear over courage, of letting old ways blind me to new possibilities." He looked directly at Bethany, and she saw genuine remorse there. "A year ago, I rejected the greatest gift the moon goddess ever gave me. I called perfection broken because I was too weak to see it." He addressed the council now. "I won't make that mistake again. Oh, Crimson Veil supports the Luna's proposal. We will contribute warriors to the unified force." Other alphas exchanged glances. If Crimson Veil, one of the oldest, most traditional packs, was willing to embrace change, perhaps it was time. One by one, they stood and pledged their support. By the time the council adjourned, the foundation for a new era had been laid. After the meeting, as wolves mingled and discussed logistics, Raphael approached Bethany and Blake carefully, and he stopped a respectful distance away, waiting for acknowledgement. Blake's arm tightened around Bethany's waist, but he nodded permission for Raphael to speak. "I wanted to apologize," Raphael said quietly. "Again, I know I've said it before, but—" "You have," Bethany interrupted gently, "and I've heard it. But Raphael, you need to stop apologizing to me and start living differently. Show through action, not words, that you've changed." "I'm trying." He looked older than his years, worn by regret. "Crimson Veil is different now. Better, I hope. We've opened our borders to refugees from corrupted attacks. We're training female warriors, something I never allowed before." A ghost of a smile. "Anita is one of our fiercest." Bethany's eyebrows rose. "My sister? She joined our warrior training 6 months ago, said she wanted to be able to protect herself, to be strong like you." Raphael's expression was complicated. "She's remarkable. I've asked her to be my second." "And she agreed?" "After making me grovel appropriately, yes." This time his smile was genuine, if sad. "She reminds me daily of my failures, keeps me honest. It's what I need." Blake studied Raphael with assessing eyes. "You've changed." "I had to. Watching what I threw away become everything I needed." Raphael shook his head. It broke something in me. Yeah, but maybe I needed to be broken before I could be rebuilt into something better. He looked at Bethany's pregnant form, and something like wonder crossed his face. The prophecy child. She'll change everything, won't she? She already has, Bethany said softly. Just by existing, she's united packs that have been enemies for generations. Then she's already greater than I could ever be. Raphael's bow was deep, genuine. I wish you both every happiness, and I swear on my life, I'll protect your daughter and this alliance with everything I have. After he left, Blake pulled Bethany close. Do you believe him? I believe he's trying. That's enough for now. She looked up at her mate. People can change, Blake. I'm proof of that. I went from dying and broken to this. She gestured at the gathered alphas, at the alliance they'd built, at the future growing inside her. You were never broken, Blake murmured, kissing her forehead. And just waiting to bloom. 2 months later, on the night of the full moon, Bethany went into labor. The birth was attended by healers from all allied packs, each wanting to witness the prophecy child's arrival. Blake never left her side, his hand gripping hers through every contraction, his love and support unwavering. When their daughter finally emerged, the fortress fell silent. She was perfect, tiny and strong, yet with a shock of dark hair and eyes that already gleamed silver, even though newborn wolves typically had clouded eyes for weeks. But more than that, she was glowing. Soft silver light emanated from her skin, just like Bethany's had when she was first marked. The moon goddess's blessing, passing to the next generation. She's beautiful, Blake whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter for the first time. Perfect. She is, Bethany agreed, exhausted but radiating joy. What should we name her? They'd discussed names for months, but never decided definitively. Now, looking at their glowing daughter, Blake smiled. Hope, he said. Her name is Hope, because that's what she represents for all of us. Bethany nodded, tears joining his. Hope Jordan, daughter of the moon goddess, bridge between the old world and the new. 6 months later. The coronation wasn't Bethany's idea, but the Council of Alphas had been unanimous. That the realm needed more than an alliance of separate packs. It needed a unified structure, and at the top of that structure, they wanted Bethany, not just as Luna of Nightshade, but as High Luna of the entire alliance. Blake would rule beside her as High Alpha, but everyone understood the truth. This new era belonged to the Silver Wolf, who'd risen from rejection to become legend. The ceremony took place in the Grand Hall, with representatives from every pack in the realm present, and even those who hadn't yet joined the alliance sent observers. Bethany stood in robes of silver and white, baby Hope in her arms. The child had grown strong and healthy, her silver eyes tracking everything with preternatural awareness. Blake stood beside her in black and silver, his hand resting on the small of her back, always touching, always connected. The officiating elder, Pamela, who'd known Bethany's destiny before anyone, stepped forward with the crown. It wasn't ornate or jeweled, and it was simple, elegant, a circlet of pure silver shaped like intertwined wolves, with a crescent moon at its peak. Bethany Jordan, Pamela's voice rang out, you who were called broken and rose as blessed, you who were rejected and became irreplaceable, you who bear the mark of the moon goddess and mother her prophesied child, do you accept the responsibility of High Luna, to guide this realm from the age of blood into the age of peace? Bethany looked out at the gathered wolves. She saw Jessie, a fierce and loyal. She saw Anita, now a warrior in her own right. She saw allied alphas who'd become friends. And in the back, standing alone, she saw Raphael. He met her eyes and nodded. Acknowledgement, respect, perhaps even gratitude that she'd survived to become this. I accept, Bethany said clearly. Not as a ruler over you, but as a servant to the realm, as a protector of all packs, as a mother not just to my daughter, but to the future we're building together. Pamela placed the crown on her head. The moment it touched her, silver light exploded outward. The moon goddess's power made manifest. Every wolf present felt it. a wave of warmth and rightness that confirmed what they all knew. This was meant to be. Hope began to glow as well, her baby laughter ringing out like bells. Mother and daughter shone together, living proof of the prophecy fulfilled. Blake was crowned beside her, and his own circlet placed with equal reverence. When they turned to face the gathered wolves together, every single one, alpha, warrior, elder, pup, dropped to one knee. Not in subjugation, in acknowledgement. A new era had begun. That night, in their private chambers, Bethany stood at the window with Hope in her arms, looking out over the realm she now guided. Blake came up behind her, wrapping them both in his embrace. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one." She leaned back against him. "Well, maybe one." He tensed. "What?" "I regret that it took dying to find you, to find myself." She turned to look at him, her eyes shining. "But then again, maybe that was necessary. Maybe I needed to be broken down completely before I could be rebuilt into this." "You were never broken," Blake insisted for the 1,000th time. "No," she agreed, smiling. "I was dormant, waiting for someone strong enough to wake the storm." Hope cooed between them, her tiny hand reaching up to touch her mother's glowing markings. "She'll be extraordinary," Blake said, watching his daughter with awe. "Even more than you." "She'll be what the realm needs." Bethany kissed Hope's forehead. "And we'll make sure she grows up in a world worthy of her." They stood together in comfortable silence, a family forged from rejection and choice, from pain and triumph. Somewhere in Crimson Vale territory, Raphael stood alone on his balcony, watching the same moon. He'd heard about the coronation, about the silver light that had filled the hall. He'd rejected that, thrown it away, called it broken. And now he lived with that knowledge every day, but he'd made a vow to do better, to be better. And he would keep it, even if the woman he'd lost would never be his again. Perhaps that was his punishment. Not death, not defeat, but living to see exactly what he'd rejected become everything he'd needed and never deserved.